I would say the biggest threat to the fossil fuel industry right now is basically collapsing demand for their product, or the predicted and expected collapsing demand for their product, which is a result of movements organizing to demand alternatives to their products, to demand a decarbonized society and economy, policies that have been implemented and are expected to be implemented to see that outcome, and changes in behavior, current and predicted. So whereas there used to be a deep discussion in the industry about peak oil as it relates to supply, when will we hit the peak of supply and then be on a downward turn, that discussion is now, when will we hit peak oil demand? When we'll be at the point where demand growth stops and it's on a downward trajectory. And the predictions of that, McKinsey, which is one of the leading research organizations, has predicted as early as 2025, 5 years, where the growth starts hitting a significant slowdown in demand. And Exxon, in its most recent report to its investors, predicts a 30% drop-off in demand for gasoline, particularly for passenger vehicles, coming soon. But that initiates a decline in other demand for oil-related products. Their expectation, and we'll talk about this more, is that that demand curve, that fall off in demand, will be met with an increase in demand for plastics generated from oil. But we'll talk about that more. But so they're facing an existential reality threat that nobody wants their products anymore. And that they're already seeing the repercussions of that, which is, again, also as a result of movements that have organized for divestment and targeting banks and investors. We are seeing a significant drop-off in investment and security of the investment moving into the sector. So I saw this as sort of an astounding figure. And I'm going to write an article on it, so nobody stump me on it if there's any journalists out there. So if you look at all the major US and European banks, with the glaring exception of Wells Fargo, between 2017 and 2018, the majority, and in fact almost all, reduced their investments in the fossil fuel industry from 2017 to 2018. That's a shocking fall off. Hedge funds, with a few glaring outsiders, are also less willing to gamble, particularly on frackers. And they're basically forcing fracking companies to come up with their due. Fracking companies have been running on losses forever. I'm here from Colorado, where the fracking industry in Colorado has lost a total of $27 billion in total in its operations. And now there's this sort of comeuppance is coming, because the expectation is not that sometime down the line that money will come. It's rather sometime down the line, actually, we're going to lose that money. And so there enormous pressure is being placed on the industry. But that then creates the biggest threat, I would say, from the industry, particularly as it relates to climate change, which is that they're facing an enormous cash shortfall, massive cash shortfall. That's why Saudi Aramco is putting forward an IPO for its for Saudi Aramco for the first time, and deep concern over their ability to make money in the future. And so their intention is to drill their way out of their problem. So they're planning massive increases in production of their product. So that's the biggest threat, I would say, is coming from them, is that they're going to try and solve their problem by producing way, way, way more. Which means that in terms of sort of responses, policies that are looking at both then curtailing demand have to be partnered with policies that are looking at curtailing supply. So if the industry is intending to drill its way out of a problem that we're identifying as climate change, then it would follow that they would need to be told not to do that, forced not to. And so I'm just gonna, because I've talked longer than I should, I'm gonna end with the quote. How many people are here with the American Geophysical Union conference? So I thought this was a really telling quote from a recent article from Business Week that just ran in October, entitled "The Age of Oil is Coming to a Close." And it reads in part, quote, "Workers in the energy industry need to be prepared for this shift. For knowledge workers, such as geologists, this means cultivating technical skills that can be useful in other fields. For managers, it means establishing a network of professional contacts outside of the oil and gas industry." And that's the discussion that's taking place within the industry.